Tweets ignite society. Statuses begin battles. Everyone has an opinion. No one wants to surrender. We bring the cold hard facts. We are calling for a ceasefire.
Hello, and thank you for joining us on this ceasefire moment. Let's talk Torah. That's what we're going to do for the next couple weeks. We're going to just be diving into what is said about the Torah in the New Testament. We've just come out of a Christian walk with the tabernacle people, the tabernacle priests, the common people. Then we went right into Passover, which ties into the tabernacle as well. And now that we understand better about the people and the priests, let's understand some of their beliefs. So we're going to dive into the Torah. I do not attempt to say these words because I have no idea how to say them, but this is the word for Torah. Its root word means to teach or to throw, like to throw a ball, shoot an arrow, or point a finger. Some of the common translations are the law or the command, the word of God, and scriptures or writings, depending on what translation you're reading. If we look at the law or the command, this typically brings forth the thought or the idea of the written Torah, the oral Torah, the book of the law, or the law of Moses. The law. This is one of the most frequent translations, the law. You can have several different kinds of law being meant when you read the law. So you have the law of Jehovah or God, the law and the command, the law for burnt offerings and various other offerings, the law of plague of leprosy, the law of Hur, the law of jealousies, Nazarites, law, you get the idea. There's a whole bunch of different laws that when you read the law, you need to read the context around it in order to understand exactly what law they're talking about. You might see it written as the command. A command, whether human or divine, collectively is the law, which was commanded, or the law, ordinance, precept. We typically refer to the 10 commandments as the law if we're a Christian. However, there were many more laws than that. You have the written Torah. The written Torah is specifically the written word given to Moses. There's 613 commandments given to Moses. We tend to think that there were 10 on a tablet of stone. We're going to find out that that isn't necessarily true. There was a book that Moses wrote that included more than just the 10. Specifically, the written word given to Moses, the Sadducees in Jesus' time adhered to all of these 613 commandments. So when we're reading something in our Bible, we need to ask ourselves, who's talking and what did they believe? The commandments, the mitzvah, the testimony, the witness, and also known as the Shamash, the Pentateuch, or the 5 books of Moses. The Septuagint, rendered the Hebrew word Torah, has historically given rise to the misunderstanding that Torah means legalism. We typically refer to the 10 commandments as the commandments. We've known them as the tablets, and God called it the testimony, and some translations use the witness. The witness or the testimony are more accurate to what God called, what we have commonly called the 10 commandments. The other instructions found in Torah he referred to as his right rulings, and we'll talk more about these later. And of course, we all know what the Word of God is. What we would call a book of the Bible, they would have called the writing or the scriptures. They might just refer to it as the scriptures. And when we're reading our Bibles, anything in the New Testament where it says scriptures is 100% referring to scriptures that were written before the New Testament and not referring to anything in the New Testament. The meaning of Torah is the teachings, doctrine, instructions, and directions. You can have the Torah of Moses, which is the law of Moses referred to in the first 5 books of the scriptures or our Bible. We all know what the first 5 books of our Bible are and all that they contained. It could also mean the written Torah. We talked about the written Torah, which included the 613 commandments that were given to Moses. The oral Torah, which is traditions that were handed down. These were transmitted from generation verbally and fills in the gaps of the written Torah. The Jews believed that all of the written Torah hung on the information given from the oral Torah. In other words, you couldn't read what was in the written Torah and fully understand it unless you knew the oral Torah as well. The Pharisees held to both the written and the oral Torahs. So Saul or Paul was a Pharisee. So he would have believed in all of the written Torah and all of the oral Torah. The Sadducees, however, would have only believed in the written Torah. The words of the prophet are considered oral Torah. So when we're reading our Bibles, we might think that if a prophet is speaking, that would become oral Torah for us. There was a rabbi in the 3rd century who put these into writing, and that was called the Mishnah. Then the Babylonian rabbis added more details, and that was called the Talmud. And the Masoretes, which were between the 7th and 10th century, produced the Masoretic text. It can refer to a body of laws, which we talked about a little bit ago with all the different laws for a specific subject, such as the Torah of the grain offering, the Torah of the guilt offering, the Torah of the sin offering, and so on and so forth. And in modern times, it's used to incorporate all of Jewish law and tradition. So for Christians, we don't tend to break it up into any of these groups. When we hear Torah, we just think that means everything related to Jewish traditions, Jewish laws, the Jewish Bible, and that's not necessarily the case. So that was our quick overview of the Torah. We're going to dive deep into some of these chapters. We're going to first start out by looking at what did Jesus say about the Torah. Thank you for joining us on this ceasefire moment. I hope you learned something.